Hi, we are here this morning with Amber Case, our keynote speaker for AnxietyTech, and we are so excited to have her. And we just want to have you introduce yourself, Amber, and tell us a little bit about what you'll be talking about.
Sure. Hi, my name's Amber Case. I live in Portland, Oregon and Boston, Massachusetts. I'm doing some research right now on what's called calm technology, which comes from the 80s and 90s out of Xerox PARC. And the idea is that in the future, which we're now in, devices will outnumber people, and technology will no longer be the scarce resource. It will be our attention. And how technology makes or breaks our attention will improve or unimprove our lives. So we have the power as designers to design things better. We have the ability to stop and pause before we use our devices so that we don't get carried away. And we have to remember that social networks make money off of our misery, so we need to not just continue to use them when we're feeling bad. We are a little bit out of balance, but we can come back to what the Greeks called kairos time instead of chronos time. Kairos time is the time outside of time, where you forget about time, where you fall in love or watch a kid's first steps. The time that you remember when you're 80 and you're telling your grandchildren. These are the important moments versus what the Greeks called chronos time, which is very industrial time. And that industrial time is what gets us when we're on our computers. It is always this interruptive attention-getting time. And that prevents us from being more human. And I'd like to see us return to the original promise of technology, which was to give us more time and not less, to amplify our creativity instead of get in the way.
Been kind of advising many companies, talking to many different people about some of these over the last couple of years. What's the response been from especially big tech companies and maybe other designers and engineers that have been learning about these principles?
Sure. Well, it's been really positive. What I want to do is give people, especially big tech companies, advice that doesn't make them afraid of losing money. Because if you're a publicly traded company, you have to make profit and you have to return money to your investors. Regardless of what ethics somebody has, if somebody says, well, I'm leaving because of ethical purposes, somebody else will replace them. People need to make money. What this means is that you can adopt calm technology within your company and actually make more money, not less. It's cheaper to support calm products because they're easier to maintain, they have less features, they have only the tech that's necessary and nothing more. They make better use of people's attention, and so it's easier for people to have them alongside their lives seamlessly. They have less surface area for attack in terms of security because they've been tested for when things go wrong. Microsoft and other large companies, like for instance, I did a project with Microsoft, and they said, look, we have all of these customers and now the market's been saturated. We have to focus on people who have temporary disabilities. If you have a baby and you have one hand free, can you still use the technology? That's a temporary disclusion, a more or a situational one. If you're in a loud coffee shop and the barista can't hear your order, that's situational. Or permanent if you have the loss of an arm. It's just looking through all these different situations that humans might have and how to make the technology work well with each of those situations. That's the kind of things that we don't focus on because especially if you're making something in San Francisco, you're usually building it for other San Franciscans. You're testing it in a lab with perfect Wi-Fi and great battery life and latest technology. Why not make it work equally as well for somebody who has a really bad operating system and very little battery life left? If you work with the non-optimal situations, you make technology that works well for everybody, and that actually means your market share is far larger. You can run a company that maybe becomes a classic. I'd love to see technology that lasts for generations instead of seasons.
Okay, so one question I had for you, Amber, was just about technology. You talked so much about calm technology and maybe technology that's less stressful, less harmful. I mean, so much of what we're hoping to bring to light in this conference is how technology affects people's mental health and how technology can be used to improve mental health. And I was kind of wondering from you if you feel, is there this kind of an inherent reason why technology has to cause so much stress and depression in our lives? Or Is it really possible that we can have technology that does good and helps us live happier, better lives?
Yeah, great question. I think the issue is that right now we have very portable technology, and companies make money off of advertising, and so they have an incentive to get us on the page for a long time. And the best way to get you on the page is to show you upsetting news, to show you controversial things, even fake news makes a lot of money, and to suck you back in. And so apps do that by sending you push notifications. So the first thing you can do is turn off all those push notifications, except for the ones for humans. There's, dating apps are like this casino. And if you look at casinos, people actually, the really addicted people aren't really interested in the payout. They don't really want the money. They just like the routine of just, hi, of just pulling the trigger and seeing whether whether the icons line up. Sherry Turkle wrote a great book on the inner history of devices, there was an excellent set of essays in there, and one had an interview with somebody who was addicted to gambling. And in a way, when you are clicking on a dating app, it is like gambling. And a lot of people don't really want to meet up in person. They don't have time. So they're just using it as you would a cigarette between breaks in the day, as a stressful thing, as a default. And it's been shown that people are touching their phones like 10,000 times a day, and maybe 50% of those are dating apps. Even if people are in a committed relationship, they just like to scroll through and see what's out there. But people don't really, it's rare that people end up meeting in person. They're doing more scrolling. And then the same with the study done on the mice. Mice had this button that they could press to get, it was cocaine, it was addicting drug. And so what the study was that the mice, if they were administered it 3 times a day, it was fine. They learned to do other things, and then they would get the reward. But if the mouse pressed the button and randomly they could get the feedback, they would just sit there pressing the button all day. Now, a follow-up study, which I think is much more interesting, is that they had 2 different sets of mice. One set of mice had friends and family and a purpose and activities, playtime, an enriched life, if you will. And another set of mice had nothing in their cage. When they were given the mice the choice to press the lever and get the drug, the mice without the enriched lives would press the button all the time, and the mice without the enriched lives would not press the button. So the idea was that a lot of people right now don't have what you might call an enriched life. A lot of that's been taken away from the Industrial Revolution. The idea of uncertainty in jobs, the random schedule of working, which you might be just doing a gig economy job, the college debt, the postponement of having children, the inability to buy a house, the confusion on health. All of these things are contributing to the state of uncertainty and an unenriched life, and therefore, when you give somebody a phone, and they're not sitting in front of a desktop, they're going to binge on whatever is there. They're going to press that button all the time. And I think it's just amplifying that sense of isolation. It's no longer that you can walk down the street for a lot of people in a small town and have family businesses that have been there for 20 or 30 years and know the television repair person and know the butcher and know the local grocery store person. My grandmother grew up in upstate New York, and she walked to school, and she knew everybody in town, and she helped out at her father's shop, and she had a charmed life, and she learned how to draw, and she went to art school, and then she married my grandfather, and then they moved to Utah, and it was a very, very nice life, Yeah. And when she passed away, we were at her funeral, and we were just realizing, wow, things have changed a lot. And so she had a very nice experience, and then she was involved with the church for a really long time, and so even though her husband died, she was able to be involved with the community and have some purpose. And right now, I see a lot of people, me included, that I thought I had a very particular life set up when I found the love of my life, and that didn't work out, and I have to keep making my career. I don't have one handed to me, by having a college degree. I have to build it myself. And so depression, I think, is a lot of different pieces. Like, anxiety is about the future and past. Depression is about not necessarily being able to move forward. You get stuck in your brain gets way overdeveloped, your body doesn't. So just having some exercises that you can do while you're laying in bed, some movement. I think one of the other issues is that with a phone, you're crunching your neck, and you're motionless. With a television, at least there was a commercial break. You could go use the restroom. You could get a glass of water.
We need to have commercial breaks on our phones. I mean, I never thought that's a good idea, but it makes so much sense. Like say, hey, stop what you're doing, take some time out, give you a time to refresh and think.
It's physically draining.
Big pause button. You can't use your phone for the next 20 minutes unless it's an emergency call.
And we've seen both Google and Apple kind of starting to talk about some of this digital wellness and these other concepts, and of at least tracking what you're doing and maybe starting to set more limits, and hopefully that's going to become much more common and something that really takes off.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, everybody's going to try and do that and say that they were really ahead of the time to do that, but really it's the format that we have with our machines. Our laptop we can sit in bed with, and we can crunch our neck. The blue light inhibits melatonin production, so we have less restfulness. We don't necessarily have a schedule with it because it's always used in between all these other moments. And I always try to ask people, like, do you remember the last Reddit binge you went on? What did you think? What was the last, like, really upsetting conversation you had online? Like, people's lives and careers are getting ruined by somebody not eating in the morning and not drinking coffee and taking their emotions out on somebody else. On the other hand, there's been a lot of, light pushed on really bad practices, so that's been good too. But there is a very fast emotional kind of whiplash that can happen where we don't pause to have a deep breath. We haven't learned ethics and diplomacy and these things, and we need to have these things again. In school, we've taken everything out that has meaning. We've taken out music programs, art programs, any of the soft things, and all we're left with is math and science, which have immediate, precise answers. And so when people get into tech and they're basically living like they did in high school, extending into their 40s, and they say, my life has no meaning, I feel awful, then they go and appropriate some South American culture and take ayahuasca, asking for, some arbitrary amount of meaning. Or, some people I know, they freak out, leave tech altogether and go work on a farm, because a farm is where you can see things grow.
It can be so overwhelming. There's such this burnout problem where you just get like you have to be done with it because you feel like there's no healthy way to be involved in technology. So,
or you end up doing analog synthesizer stuff and you do music, which is the route I'm going on. Because then it's social. It's embodied, and I think that's the problem right now, is a lot of our technology is not embodied. Even sitting at a desktop computer, you at least are embodied because you have the screen at a reasonable height. You are able to think, you're sitting there.
What do you mean by embodied? What does that mean?
Sports are embodied, right? Like painting is embodied, music is embodied. You're either performing, you're building up to something, you're taking 2 or 3 years to get somewhat good at something, you're able to be an amateur, you have a community around you that's teaching you, you have some training, you have an apprenticeship. With tech, you don't have to be good at Facebook to participate in Facebook. There's no
internship level.
Yeah.
You don't work.
You don't work for it.
Of learning how to master it. There's no mastery, right? It's just like
the mastery means that your entire life is basically ad sponsored, and you are monetizing your kids by taking photos of them with a Campbell's soup can so that you can get the $40 a month that they agreed to per post or whatever. And then there's a whole other burnout that comes with that. I'm monetizing my kids. And you can see that, right?
All this stuff.
Right.
Okay, Amber, I think
awesome.
we've got to wrap up.
Gotta leave something.
I can't wait
to
for you to come to AnxietyTech in just over 2 weeks now. I think it's going to be fascinating, and I look forward to both hearing your talk and also chatting with you. And hopefully others. I'm sure we'll have a lot of informal opportunities to talk and learn more about these things.
Thank you so much for being willing to come and be our keynote speaker. We're so excited.
We are so excited. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. And please, everyone, come to AnxietyTech, www.anxietytech.com for tickets. It's July 18th at the Palace of Fine Arts Theater in San Francisco. Thanks so much for talking with us, Amber.
Thanks a lot. See you later.
Bye. All right. Bye.